started by listening to Claire about the imposter syndrome and navigating the world of work outside this frame. But putting into context, we're talking about research today. And what I've learned with my bits in research is it's an ability or the reflection of oneself, because you're constantly questioning what is knowledge. But to question what is knowledge, you have to understand your own worldview. And in understanding your own worldview, you should be pretty confident in yourself. And imposter syndrome appears from time to time, and luckily we've been empowered with the tools that could lead us forward. And then we went on to learn about someone that propelled himself into the future, constantly tackling adversity in a positive frame, taking life's challenges and looking at them as opportunities. And now it's only fitting that we've seen the perspective of business, but how do you fundraise? How do you aspire, as I want to be? We're going to listen to Cheryl today. Cheryl, again, what she wants you to know is what's in front of you. But what she won't mention is that she has quite some experience in a university space. Upon my research, I've seen that she's begun the great migration. She started off in Johannesburg and went north for a better life. She landed at the great University of Pretoria. And once that time passed, she thought to give back and went down to the University of Stellenbosch and Western Cape. But she's come back home, where she finds peace. And in her time, pastor, she also, keeping to the theme, moving stride to stride, is an entrepreneur herself. So today she'll be sharing on fundraising opportunities. So could we just give a round of applause for Cheryl?
Thank you, Randy. It is good to be back at UP, and I love this venue. They were still building it when I was still an employee here. So yes and no, I will be talking a little bit about money, but not specifically about fundraising, because really I came back here today to give you permission to get that hero that's inside of you out from hiding places into the real world where you need to be. And yeah, let me not get ahead of myself, because I do have a lot to say today. And I'm very excited to be here, because my first time that I started speaking was at the alumni business breakfast, and I was so nervous and so scared. And so it's really good for me to see, wow, you can overcome that fear factor. But before I tell you too much about myself, I firstly want to introduce you to an amazing student that changed my life forever. So Randy is right. I have been in higher education for a long time, and it's because of people like you. Amazing young people who want to change the world, dreams in your eyes, energy, passion, and we want you to harness that and not lose it when you face the challenges that you will face in the real world. So let me introduce you to Mikael Hendricks.
I grew up in the Mitchells Plain community. I grew up with my grandparents. This is my grandfather, and this is my house. This is where I grew up in.
I grew up in a small town in the Northern Cape called Pella, right on the border with Namibia. Extremely small place. I think we got electricity when I was 12. Yes, I am the first person in my family to have gone to university.
Growing up in this community, there were various challenges. It's plagued by gangsterism and drug and alcohol abuse.
He was a good boy, little bit naughty. When you grow up further, I admire him. He's the first person in our family that go to a university.
Amicus, or amici, Latin for friends. It's a group of friends of the law faculty, and it's former students and attorneys and advocates, you know, people like myself, and they provide funding for bursaries.
Without the support of the Amicus Fund bursary, I would have been a bit less focused.
It changed me, certainly put me on a different trajectory. Try and give back a bit, inspire somebody else to also, outgrow poverty.
As a young democracy, our constitution is still very new, and there's still lots of room for development and improvement, and I want to be part of that development. If it is used correctly, it can really change the lives of millions of South Africans.
Who of you identifies with Mikael in some way? Bursary recipients, a vision to change the world, overcoming personal obstacles. Do you identify with Mikhail a little bit? Whenever I watch this video, I have to really guard my heart because I can get very emotional. And I've learned that it's okay to be emotional because I wish I could tell you where Mikhail is now and what he's done. But unfortunately, on the 18th of May, 2017, Mikhail Hendricks ran out of hope. And I got a call to say that he had unfortunately died by suicide. And it broke my heart, as it is also affecting your heart today. And I share this with you just because when I was at UP, this is when I started to hear about suicides with students. And we don't like to talk about it, but we must talk about it because it's people. They are precious people. You are precious and valuable. And when I went to Stellenbosch University, we also started hearing about it more, and people don't know what to do, so we just, say, oh, that's so sad, and we go about our day. But this one was too close for me. This one, I was like, this is not supposed to happen. And when I went to his funeral, I realized that I was part of a broken system. Yes, I was fundraising millions of rands in bursary funding to help young people like yourself. MasterCard is an amazing donor to help you to see your potential and to build that hope. And universities are brilliant at helping your heads to be so strong, mentally sharp. But what about our hearts? I also identify with Mikhail, much as you did, because I was also the first in my family to go through university for the first time, to shift from blue collar to white collar work. And I would tell donors, you know what? Your support is helping them break the poverty cycle. But inside, we're breaking because it's not easy to do that. So I'm sharing this with you today because Mikhail's story was really the birth of my call to adventure, my hero's journey. So I can show you my highlight reel and show you that I've worked at 4 different universities, I've done a TED Talk, I have 2 books. But what really inspires me is my purpose. And so my purpose today with this session is going to help you to find what is your story, what is your why, what is the thing that you know should not be happening in this world, and you think someone should do something about it, and actually you know that you are probably the person to also start doing something about it, because that's essentially what a social enterprise is. We see a problem in the world, and we're saying, we need to fix this. Okay, so that's what I'm going to lean in today, to ask you to start thinking about that problem that you want to solve, because you feeling something, the thing that makes you mad and sad, is what is going to drive your storytelling around why are you doing what you're doing. So I know I started very heavy, so I'm going to try and make it a little easier today by giving away one of my new books that I've written. It's called Managing Money in the Real World, Connecting Purpose and Joy to Money Mastery. So since I left Stellenbosch University, I've been doing different types of programs, and one of them is Managing Money in the Real World. While at UP, I realized that I was raising millions of rands for other people, but I wasn't doing a good job of managing my personal finances. So what you think about money is really going to affect how you work with donor money. It's important. And so the subtitle is Connecting Purpose and Joy to Money Mastery. So the first person that can guess my age when I started my first job will get the copy of this book. Raise your hands if you'd like to guess. Let's see, Hugh. How old was I? Close. At the back? Close. You have to go a little lower. Almost there. Yeah, you? Almost. Glasses. Almost. Last answer, guys. Come on. There, right there in the back. 17. She's the winner. Please pass this back to her. At the break, please come to me. I'll sign for you, okay? 17 years old when I started my first job. So I've been working for a very, very long time. And so what I've learned in my 25 years is what I'm going to try and crystallize for you today. This is something I've come across since I've been doing my work, and I wish I had known this years ago. But Aristotle says educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all. So this is why I do the wholeness work, because we have to spend as much time and energy and focus on our head, on our hearts, as well as our head. And so there's 3 things I want to leave with you this morning. First one, you are not broken. If I had to spend time with you in one-on-one coaching sessions, we can unpack all the reasons why you feel not good enough, why you feel broken. And often it's things that happen to us that we didn't have control over. Okay, so there will be some trigger things coming up today. Don't ignore it, because actually we need to deal with that. Those things, those lies, that shameful stuff is feeding the imposter syndrome. It's telling us we're not good enough. The second thing I want to leave with you today is that there is a hero in you. We aren't waiting for a prince to come and save us. I'm sorry, guys, but the prince is dead. Okay? The last one was married to Meghan Markle. That's it. It's all done. No more princes, okay? We are the hero in our own lives. And the last thing I want to say to you today that I want to kind of crystallize for you is it takes whole people to fix a broken world. So I'm saying this because for many years I lived as a broken person. I felt very disconnected. I felt very broken. It wasn't the truth about who I was, but it felt very real. Okay, so if you want to think about what is a whole person, we see ourselves as a 3-part being. The spirit part of ourselves is the part of us that leaves our body when we die, right? The spirit part. The soul is your mind and your emotions, what you think and what you feel, because haven't you noticed that if you get stressed, you start eating junk food, you feel worse, you start thinking worse thoughts, it's a vicious cycle, right? And then our body is that physical part of us that is receiving information from our 5 senses. So I see the heart, it's supposed to be a little diagram that goes this way. This is our PDF. The heart is essentially that bridge between your spirit self and your soul. So those of you who are developing spiritual disciplines, who do kind of meditate and pray and kind of look into a higher power, that's the part of the communication that happens. So you also get information from your spirit. And essentially, that's where your true identity is in a spirit self, because no human being, our moms can be great, our partners can be great, but they can never give us unconditional love. To know that you are worthy and accepted and powerful and valued, that has to come from somewhere beyond what we can see. And something else that's really important is that it's all interconnected. The 3 main areas of our lives, our relationship with ourselves and others, our career paths, and our finances are all interconnected. So when you improve one area, you make other areas better. It was actually when I started here at UP that I started to address the debt that I had. So when in my 20s, because I wasn't dealing with the pain in my heart, I was in coping behavior. So I went into shopping addiction. Okay, maybe we can do the next book this way. Guess how much money I had in debt? Who can guess that? As the second option, yeah? Oh, did you read my bio or something? Okay, because you are a UP member, staff member. Are you a student? I have special copies for your team. I'm going to give it to a student. Okay. I don't know. What do you think, guys? Can she choose? Let me try and do it throughout the session. Okay, so when I got to UP, this is when I was actually married, and when I got married, before we got married, my husband said, we need to do an antenuptial contract. And it was the first time I actually faced how much money I owed. Because debt is like quicksand. I know you can't believe it, but it happens. Because we in our 20s, we think, oh no, the rules don't apply to me. Yeah, maybe she got into trouble, but I'll be okay. That's what I told myself. And so it began to be a mirror, because how can I be a good steward of somebody else's money when I'm not trusting myself with my money? And so that's when I started to learn how to pay off my debt. And as I got better with my finances, I could see confidence building in the way that I would handle my professional relationships. I could have better boundaries. It took me 4 years to pay off the debt. And by that time, I was already working at Stellenbosch University. The year that Mikkel passed away, November of that year, was the year that I became debt-free. And a year later, I decided I had to leave my job and start to do this work, wholeness work, because I knew I couldn't not do it anymore. And if I was still paying off my debt, I wouldn't be able to do that. So anyway, this is the anti-debt message as well. Don't get into debt. So essentially, this is why it's important to understand your identity and to work on developing that whole self. Because if you have a strong, secure identity, you bring that wholeness and freedom and peace and joy into your relationships. You're not expecting people to give that to you, you are offering that. You come with your meaning and your purpose and your why. So maybe you start your business immediately, or maybe you're going to go into a job, and that job is going to give you lots of lessons that is important for you to know how to grow your own business. Every single job I had, and I've had 16 or 17 right now already, that's many. Everything that I've had, you're like, how did you work? I'm old, remember? I've worked 25 years. That's why I've had so many jobs. But every single job has taught me something. And fundraising, working as a fundraiser, was such a brilliant way for me to learn about building a business because it's relationships. So when you're thinking about fundraising for your organization, for your enterprise, don't see it as, oh my gosh, I don't want to beg. I never saw fundraising as I'm a beggar, asking people for money. I saw myself as a matchmaker. I'm connecting people's means with their passions. So this is why it's important to understand what is my story around what I'm trying to do, because that's how you connect with people that believe and want to work on the same things. So that's important, okay? So it's all interlinked, and you'll start to see as you improve your relationship with yourself, your finances get better, and your career connections also get better. So I want to talk about the difference between the fairy tale that we're living in and the real adventure. Now you might think, Cheryl, I'm not 5 years old anymore. I don't believe in Cinderella. But I want you to be honest with me. If you've had this thought over the past month, raise your hand. When I meet the one, then I'll be happy. There's one honest person, there's two, yeah? There's a few, there's some romantics in the room, I like that. When I meet the one, then I'll be happy. Okay, let's try another one. When I start making money, then life will be easier. Whoa, okay. We got onto something there. When I start making money, then I don't have to worry, things will be easier. When I get my dream job, then things will be okay. Yeah? Okay. It's not wrong to plan and desire and have these dreams. It's not wrong for that. But we've also lived enough to know that life doesn't always go that way. The real adventure of life is open-ended. You're walking through life, it's a week, suddenly there's a curveball that happens. Your partner that you thought was madly in love with you is now suddenly posting pictures of someone else on Instagram. You're like, what just happened? The fairy tale is ruined, right? I hope that wasn't too close to home for you, unfortunately. I'm sorry if it was. But essentially, the fairy tale has this narrative structure. Okay, you've got this struggle. Think about Cinderella. There's the evil sisters and the stepmom. There's a perpetrator. And then she's waiting for the prince to come, someone to save her, and then she has a happy ending she's chosen. Now think about if we apply that to how we are planning to grow our social enterprise. That makes us passive. It keeps us dependent on factors we actually don't have any control over. And we are not in the center of the story, actually. So the lie of the fairy tale says, when the prince comes or the perpetrator changes, then I'll be happy. And even though things are maybe not working out, we stay with it because it's familiar, and then we we feel like that's comfortable. Someone needs to come and rescue us. Something else has to change. I'm not strong enough to do this on my own. It's a passivity thing. It might be cute to be waiting around in heels and a lovely dress to be chosen, but it's also very boring. There's other things to do with our lives, right? Donald Winnicott is an English psychologist, and he created the concepts of the false self and the real self. Now, you may have already covered this in your imposter syndrome session, so I'm going to go through this very quickly. But he says it's a joy to be hidden, but a disaster not to be found. So sometimes we have to hide our true self because maybe in our families of origin, our origin story, who we really were was not acceptable. I was doing a session yesterday, and I was a session on public speaking yesterday, and I was sharing how when I was 16, I used to stutter in school so badly that I couldn't even speak in school. And that was because the home that I was in was plagued by domestic violence. So my voice was violently opposed. I had multiple traumas happening to me before the age of 30. So then it was kind of like, life is dangerous. You need to keep yourself safe. So I hid a lot. But there's always this true self of who we really are, and that's the person I'm calling out today. The true self is somebody who is at peace with who they are, comfortable in their skin, not anxious, actually can just be standing in front of people and speaking. And that person is worth fighting for. That person was always inside of me, just very deep. And I had to dig her out, okay? So that's what I want you to understand today, is that most likely, this is where we're living. We're living in the shadow self phase. Is the laser working? Anyway, shadow self. There's part of the false self in us, and there's part of the true self in us. Okay, but what we want to do more and more is to get to the full whole self, because sometimes we have to bring the healthy false self. So if you go into a job, right, an organization, you can't just go there with your slops and your tackies and your, there's a way to be in that space. So that's a kind of healthy false self because you are presenting your professional self. But the unhealthy false self is what gets us into dysfunction because we're not dealing with what's really hurting. We are just putting a band-aid over something that's bleeding. And so we're not actually addressing, and that's where the dysfunction comes from. That's where we get into narcissism and we get into controlling behaviors. And it forces us to comply rather than to adapt. And if you actually want to go back to where your place that you want to impact the world, you have to become a disruptor. You have to be comfortable with talking about things that people don't want to talk about. When I started talking about wholeness, this was before COVID, and I felt like I was this lone voice in the desert. No one was hearing anything. And then COVID happened, and we realized that the way that we were working wasn't working anymore. So we had to fix that, And now we see quiet quitting happening and all of these things about people being disengaged from their work. Why? Because we've been living from the false self, and it's making us sick and poor because we try to use money to deal with that. So we respond to fear in 4 different ways. Either we become someone that's highly combative, we're fighting, we get very sensitive when people are criticizing us. So think about how that impacts you getting potential funders or support or finding people. If you're always fighting, combative, not willing to listen, to be collaborative, people won't want to be around you, actually. People do business with people that they know, like, and trust. So you have to be okay with people knowing you, and firstly, you have to know yourself, and then liking yourself first. If you don't like yourself, don't make that somebody else's job. It's not fair. Like yourself first, and then trusting, knowing that if I get money in, I'm going to use it in the right way. The other way that we deal with fear is trying to run away, we freeze, we just don't want to deal with it, or we go into fawning and people-pleasing behaviors. So those are not healthy ways of dealing with it. So overcoming the perfectionism lie, often we try to not deal with pain. But actually, I'm here to say to you today that pain is going to be inevitable. We have to just understand that pain will happen, but I can handle the pain, and I can actually transform my pain into power. So using the pain to actually fuel your purpose is something that is remarkable. Because I still feel the pain of telling the story about Mikhail. But now I'm deciding to use that as fuel to be able to come and speak to other audiences every single time, because I know there are others like Mikhail in the world. And that's how you shift that. You can't avoid pain, but you can choose to grow from it. So, it's an act of rebellion to live as a whole person in a broken world. And I'm calling out the rebels today. There's something in you that you want to fight. You want to be able to overcome. You want to be that brave person, that champion, the one that says, hey, this is not okay. This should not be happening in this day and age. This is the impact of it, and this is what we're going to do to change it. So you have to become bold enough to become a spokesperson for your cause. Who is going to take up that call today? Are you going to be brave enough? Maybe, yes. He's like, maybe, no. Yeah, we have to. We have to. Because if we are not the ones to speak about it, then who will? So the whole self is something that you're building that incorporates who you really are. And eventually that false self dies away. You do not have to accept brokenness. You can heal, you can grow, and you can transform into the real you. Let me tell you, I've had many line managers in my lifetime. Not one of them would have signed off what I'm doing today, because they couldn't see the real me. It wasn't their job to see who I really am. That's my job. They can only see a part of you that they need to fulfill this function. Okay, so when you do go into organizations and when you do work, remember that. Remember that it's your job to bring your whole self to that space. So there's a hero in you. I want to make sure that we have time for questions today. There's a hero in you. And I want you to think about right now, where am I right now? In terms of my emotional health, in terms of my physical health, make a note, write it down. In terms of my finances, my career goals, where am I now? And where do I want to be? Where do I want to go? Let's say a year from now, 2 years from now. Some of you do have these ideas in your mind. And when we go into our Q&A section, we'll look at that. But where am I now? Where do I want to be? And then how we get there, we'll unpack that a bit more today. Because whenever you feel stuck, I want you to picture this in your head. Because your brain is actually a very powerful tool. Whatever you feed it, it will build on. So feed it more questions, and it will try and give you some answers. So if I get stuck, okay, why am I feeling this way? This is also a great way to start listening to your heart. Why am I feeling this way? Why did what that person said or the way they said it, why did that affect me? Why did I spend this money when I know I shouldn't have? Okay? Learn to look in the mirror and face that false self, because sometimes the truth is painful, but there is a truth that sets us free, the real self free. So the call to adventure, who would like to tell me their favorite adventure story? Think about the epic ones, favorite adventure that you watch over and over again. Harry Potter. Randy's one is Harry Potter. How often have you watched Harry Potter? Every 4 years? Okay. So let's think about Harry Potter. So Harry, we meet him in the opening scene as somebody who is without agency. He's subject to the perpetrator. We see the classic fairy tale, and he's stuck in a situation he hasn't chosen. And what happens, Randy? No, but what happens in the scene that changes things for him? The owl comes and gives him a letter. You get too deep there, Andy. The research brain, very deep. It's okay. But something comes into Harry's space and calls him out. There's an envelope that comes from an owl, and he has to answer that call to adventure. He has to make that choice to go. And when he steps out, he goes into his special world. And who does he meet? His mentor, his guides. He also meets new people, tribe members, also those of the gifted, right? And we could say that about this group. Why have you been called out? Why are you special? There are many young people who needed this kind of support and help, and you are sitting here today, right? So these are your tribe members. But what is very important in the hero's journey is that he meets his nemesis, the real enemy that he has to fight. And he starts that process of trying to overcome this thing. So it wasn't even about his weird uncle, back home. His real enemy is here in this world. And his tribe members are also there to fight the enemy. Okay, and he overcomes that through many series. This is why it's good to have a series process. But this is really, they said, the essence of the hero's journey. It's an inner quest. If you want to really understand the landscape of your heart, hopefully this picture helps you a bit. Because what's underneath the surface, our values, our beliefs, our personality, our mindset, the things that make us uniquely who we are, is also our power. But if we don't know that, the healthy parts of it, and start to bring that out, then we'll always be stuck in the false self cycle. Okay, so the hero's journey process is very different to the fairy tale, because in the hero's journey, what happens is you meet your guide, your coach, your mentor, that person or people that can say, there's more to you than meets the eye. And you protest and say, no, it's not me, I'm not the hero, you got the wrong person. And they say, no, but it is you. And then Grace is like, oh, really? Yes, Grace. Because you also probably do that to people. You are that person for others. You're seeing that greatness in people. You're calling it out. And they meet the tribe members, and the tribe members are weird and quirky and funny, very much like them. The same kind of weird. You want to meet those people and hang around them more often, right? I think you probably have those people already in the room. And then you do this important thing, which is the real fight. And this is where the hero is forged. So every time Voldemort, right, he that shall not be named, comes up, he gets stronger each time. He also gets defeated. He also has to go back and replenish himself. But eventually, there's victory. So this is how the hero's journey is different from the fairy tale. Because the fairy tale, you have the happy ending, but then we know the happy ending doesn't last very long. But in the hero's journey, you have the victory. You're overcoming something. So I want you to think about in your life, who is your guide? Who are those coaches and mentors that you respect, that care about you, and that you know if you spend time with them, they will challenge you to see who you really are? Think about who are those people in your life. And if you don't have them, how can I start to look for them, find them, seek them out? And then who are your tribe members? Who are those smart people that you care about that want you to be your real self, that you don't have to wear the mask around? Think about the difference of when you spend time with a friend and it's toxic in a way or unhealthy, when you leave that time with them, you're like, oh, I feel so tired and I feel so drained. Right? Or you see them, their WhatsApp, you're like, oh no, I can't deal with this today. We all have those people, Randy's laughing, people, because we do, right? But those who are your true tribe members are those who, when you're around them, you don't talk about people, you talk about ideas. You talk about connections, you talk about possibility. When you leave there, you're like, oh my gosh, I can go kill Voldemort myself, barehanded, because they give you energy. So those are the people you want to spend more time with. A safe person is somebody who's always in your corner. They celebrate your victories. They're not jealous when you achieve something. They tell you the truth in love. They're like, you know what, that red is not your color. Really, don't wear red again. It's a silly example, but you know what I mean. They keep you accountable. They're like, why are you dating this person? You know this person's not good. Again, they are on Instagram with a third person. When will you see the truth? Those people, you want them in your life to call you out. And they also exhibit a healthy sense of self-awareness. So these are the stages that we go through in growth and challenge and actually adulting. Welcome to it. It's not always fun. But the stages of the hero's journey, if we think about it in our own lives, is we are leaving the land of the familiar. It's a false safety. We choose the call to adventure, the pain of growth. We fight. I know that you've had many fights to even be here today, and there's many fights ahead. You've had to overcome some things. And in the cave of rebirth, this is where it's so important. The cave of rebirth is something we try to run away from, but it's something we should embrace. And let me tell you what that means. So, who knows what that is? Someone said it? Phoenix. There we go. So the phoenix is that mythical bird that is able to rebirth themselves. So in the fires of death, a new version of themselves is born. And yes, it's painful. It's horrible. No one wants to go through that. But this is the essence of the hero's journey process. This is how you get rid of the false self. This is how the false self has to die. So let me give you an example in my own life. When I left Stellenbosch University, I moved back up to Joburg. I was going to start this business, and then I got pregnant, which I wanted to because we were praying for this to happen. But then I couldn't work the way I used to work. I was literally on the couch sleeping. And then she was born, and she wasn't a fundraising project. She wasn't an annual report. She was an actual person that I now had to take care of, and I was nursing. And then we went to Stellenbosch University to do the first training that we've ever done around financial literacy. She was 3 months old. And in between sessions, I was nursing her. So, wow, that was amazing. And then COVID hit. So, life, there we go. Life is not linear. It's not a fairy tale. There's some real stuff. But in that process, the way that Cheryl worked before as an employee could no longer exist. And it was painful, and it was difficult. I had to rewrite my story in terms of who am I, and what can I do? And every time I had to do a session that I didn't feel ready for, as I did that, and I thought about Mikael, and I connected to people, I felt a new energy building. And that's how I can stand before you today and do this session, because it's been 3 to 4 years of leaning into this very thing. Because I know what I'm fighting for. Right? There's a difference between the fairy tale and the adventure. The fairy tale is the struggle, okay? It's the survival mode, nothing ever changes, the drama triangle, waiting for someone else to change something. But the fight is, I'm shifting from just surviving into actually thriving. I'm taking responsibility to make things better. If I didn't go out of that university space and realize, oh my gosh, I can actually work alongside the space that I care about and still add value. I would never have known that if I didn't take a risk. So you will be taking risks in business. That's essentially what it is. And some people are more wired to handle more risk, and some people hate that because we are planners. We want to be able to know what's going to happen next. And so if that's you, you might need more leeway in your planning to say, I'm going to work in an organization, build this up on the side, maybe get some other people to help me to build this, and when I feel financially secure enough, then I can step out. So don't try to be like somebody else. Just be, kind of honor your own path. I found that it's more powerful to stand for something than to fight against something. So think about your own social enterprise that you want to build. What were you initially trying to fight against? Write that down. What was I fighting against? Okay? What was the thing you were coming against? If I had to do an MPO, for example, I would do one against gender-based violence. That's one thing. That's one approach. The other approach is to figure out, what am I fighting for? Because what are you fighting for is actually a more powerful thing than what you are fighting against. So I could say I was fighting against brokenness, against, all these systemic things. And actually, I can't change men who are abusive. I can't change that at all. We cannot change anybody else. But what I can do for myself, number one, is I can reclaim my own power. I can give myself permission to write my own story. I can actually have the audacity to live my own life, which takes courage, by the way. And then I can inspire others through my own transformation. And then by sharing my story, I can build the tools to help other people to find their purpose and their passion. So it's more powerful for me to fight for wholeness than to be against brokenness, because that's something I can do something about. I love Maya Angelou's quote, who says, you can't control the events that happen to you, but you can decide that you'll not be reduced by them. So that's something to hold on to, is no matter what is happening in my life, I get to decide how I reinterpret that for my life. The Truth of Adventure says that I will give up control, and even when things kind of happen and curveballs, I know that, okay, I'm on the hero's journey here. I've just gotten into my fighting against the enemy, or I'm in my cave of rebirth, or this is where I am in the process of growth. It helps to know that. Because if you know that, then you know how to lean into that process. I embrace discomfort in order to grow. I'm capable of winning these fights. That builds a resilience. This is actually where resilience is born. I discover my true value when I overcome my challenges. Because this is what you're actually trying to build. You're trying to really build a sense of, who am I as a whole person? What am I defining about my own value, and how am I reflecting that into the world? So I'm going to do a quick exercise now. I want you guys to please close your eyes and trust me, okay? It's not going to be hard to do this one. Close your eyes and let's go back in time to your high school. And you realize, oh my gosh, I'm having a dream of being at my high school, the place where they used to have the assembly. And you see this interesting machine. It's a time machine. And so you go in and you see this big red button. And of course you press it because that's what you do with the big red button. And you travel back in time, you travel forward into time, into a place, but as you open up the machine, you realize, wait, I'm still at the school hall. But now you start to see people that you recognize. And so you get out of the machine and you walk with them into the hall, and you start to realize that I can hear them and see them, but they can't see and hear me. And they're all kind of gathering around, and as they sit down, you look up and you see a picture of yourself, and there's flowers there, and you realize, this is my funeral. And then the first person comes to stand up and speak. And they're talking about how you lived your life. And they're tearful, and they're crying, and somebody has to come and hold their hand. And they say, this is how this person impacted me. This is how they showed me that they cared. And the next person comes up, and they say, this is what I loved about their life. This is what I learned from their life. This is the kind of person that they always were. The next person comes up and says, they always spoke about this was their purpose. This was the impact that they wanted to make in the world. And they did that. And it was inspiring. And because they were able to accomplish that, I have inspiration that I can do the same thing. And you start to feel emotional, but no one can see you, luckily. And slowly, kind of people fade away, and you go back into the time machine, and you press the big red button again, and you come back into this moment. And when you're ready, I want you to open up your eyes. Because that's what living with the end in mind does. We don't know when the sands of our hourglass is going to be done. But we can be intentional about what we do with those little grains of sand. So after I had my catalytic moments of experiencing Mikhail's passing, I wrote down my eulogy. I know what I want people to say about me when I die. And discovering this essence of wholeness, of reconnecting the head and the heart, it's been a journey, it's been a process, but I've seen my life go from what was a downward spiral in the fairy tale world to an upward spiral. And there were things that I could never have imagined that I've been doing now because of purpose. So, how did you feel doing that exercise? How was it? Emotional? I want you to write down how you felt on your piece of paper. And I want you to write down, what did people say about me? What was it that I did that when I heard them say that, I was like, yes, I'm proud. This is exactly what I wanted to do with my life. What was that thing? It's powerful when you write things down, because this is your heart, your spirit, telling you about yourself. Things you've always known, but didn't know how to bring up to the surface, didn't know how to own it. Do you know that you are world changers right now sitting here? Do you know that people are waiting on you to come alive to who you are so that they can be connected to something in their lives that they need? That is the power of who you are. That is the value of what you can do. So I can see I've hit a nerve there, so that's brilliant. Keep writing. You've always seen these Venn diagrams around purpose, right? And what I do with my version of it is I always add in identity and dreams. So your homework, I'm giving you homework as if I'm a teacher, but homework is going to be to make a note of what is my identity? Who am I? Write down all the things that come into your mind in terms of who am I? I'm kind, I'm compassionate, I'm strong, I'm powerful, I am funny, all those things that you know about yourself. And then I want you to write down your passions. What are the things that make me mad, sad, or glad? Things that make you mad are things like, for example, if you experience gender-based violence, that makes you mad. Perhaps it's animal cruelty. It's the thing that you want to build your social enterprise around, actually. Those things that make you mad and sad. Things that you say, this should not be happening in 2023. Okay, so that's your passions. And then your abilities are things that people will pay you to do. So things that you are good at, that people will say, please come and do that for me here. So it could be research is an obvious one. But other aspects of things you haven't thought about, perhaps you are really good at leading a team, really good at communication. So all the things that people will pay you to do. And then also to write down your dreams. Because we tend to give up on our dreams when it feels like it's not going to happen, but they never die. There's never ever an expiry date on dreams, I've realized. They're always there. So keep them in mind and write them down. So as you're developing your purpose statement, with all of these categories in there, it'll start to crystallize. That one-liner statement that if you could choose to put this on your epitaph, you would do that. Okay, so my purpose statement is, I am a creative iconoclast who will ignite a global wholeness revolution. It sounds audacious, like who am I to even think that? But your purpose statement has to be bold and daring because you can't do it on your own. Harry Potter didn't slay Voldemort on his own. He had help, right? Hey? He didn't though. He couldn't do it on his own. He needed the people. We need to talk later. So this is the thing that when you are thinking about your mission and purpose of your enterprise, this is really the essence and the heart of that. So I'll give you another example of someone that I was coaching that did a purpose statement to show you that it's actually just so powerful. This is somebody that came to me and she was struggling with the finances, wasn't able to finish her CA exams, was kind of stuck. She used the word stuck a lot. But after going through this process and coaching, she then realized that this is her purpose statement. I am a passionate solution finder who awakens latent generational wealth builders. That's audacious. She had passions that was beyond just her job, that she wanted to do. The last one I want to talk to you about is a fellow UP graduate, actually. So we worked together while I worked at UP. She was one of our student assistants. And later on, I was doing a webinar around finances, and she came for coaching around help around her finances. But as we dug into all the layers that we were talking about now, removing the false self, getting to the real self, her eventual purpose statement, because she lost her dad, who had been suffering with a terminal illness, her purpose statement is, I am a strategic humanitarian leader that will ensure every ailing person across Africa has a place of peace for a dignified end. That's powerful. That's powerful. She's still working in a job, but now she knows what to use her money for. She knows what she has to use her career for. She's got this in mind. She knows she's going to build this one day. So now she's looking for roles in the UN that she can maybe apply for try and get around where she wants to get to. She's working in health sciences. She's doing marketing there, doing a great job. And she's in the right space. But now she has her why. So before we ask people for money, we need to have our compelling why. Why do you want money from me? Why do I want you to support this? Here's the big vision. Here's what we're going to do. And not just me on my own. We have a tribe. There are other people like me who are doing the same things, and this is how we are collaborating. Joseph Campbell, who created the Hero's Journey framework, said, we must be willing to let go of the life we planned so as to live the life that is waiting for us. I have a whole other section for my presentation, but I want to use time for questions. So I think I'm going to do that. But this is the last thing to say, that it does take whole people to fix a broken world. I'll end up with the 5 kind of aspects of what it takes to be a dynamic, proactive problem solver in the world. The first one is that you have to become known for solving problems. So think about the problem in the world that you want to solve. Become really good at solving that problem. Become really good at showcasing and telling people, hey, this is the problem I solve. Let's work together. 2, to lead courageously, so leading your own life and leading others. If you have this skill set, that's great. If you don't have it yet, develop that, because we'll have to lead ourselves in teams. Mastering your money. Don't let money get the better of you. You have to master it. It can't master you. Because if you trust yourself to manage money well, then you won't feel like you have to sabotage your efforts to ask other people for money for your organization. And then become a public person. Deal with that fear monster. Speak up when you are feeling scared. Keep speaking. That's how I got better at speaking. You will always be nervous. It's okay. It means that you care about something. But if you are able to speak passionately about what you believe in, that's what honestly draws people to you. Because if you're not passionate about it, if you don't believe in it, if you aren't telling a compelling story, why would anyone support that? Because you have to communicate that to them. And then cultivating wholeness is something that I know your generation is primed to do, because you don't want to work the way that our parents worked. We saw that that was broken. You're like, yes, I don't want to do that. I really believe that Gen Zs are going to change the way work happens, and that's awesome. That's exciting, because that's why we're seeing the shift, because we can't work the way we work. We can't let work be the only thing that takes up all of our time and attention. We have to bring our meaning to work. Okay, I'm going to stop now. Questions, comments? Okay, there's one here.
We'll start over there.
Okay, go for it.
I can go ahead?
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. That was really informative, and there's a lot to take from it. My question is, how do we know when to trust the process or to sit and reframe? So here's the background to my question. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes, our passions or abilities and dreams don't really align with what we are studying, for example, but somewhat relate in a remote manner. Mm-hmm. And now we're at crossroads and in an information overload age where our peers are making moves that, mm-hmm. Are groundbreaking. Mm-hmm. And they sort of have a clarity as to the fact that I studied medicine means I'm going to open my own surgery, A, B, C, D, A, B, C, D. But not everyone who studies medicine sorry.
No, that's me, I think.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Who studies medicine wants to end up being a doctor. Maybe they just want to be in the field per se. So how do you know when to trust the process and to just keep acquiring the degrees or keep doing the hours in the job or keep studying so as to eventually land where you're supposed to be? Or you need to know that this is time for you to sit down and say, okay, no, this is not working, or I need more clarity. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I think what you're sharing is something that probably the rest of the group's also feeling, like, how do I align what I'm studying into what I eventually want to do? Can I ask you how old you are? 20s, right? So this is what I'm seeing with a lot of young people. Because of the wonderful world of Instagram and comparing ourselves to the whole world, We think we have to be successful in this moment now, right? And that's a lot of pressure. So I would say, embrace the power of and. Okay, so I'm studying this thing, and I'm going to explore what else I could do in the medical field. And get around those tribe members, find some mentors, some guides to say, I am studying this, but how could I apply this? Go onto LinkedIn and look at other UP graduates, their profiles, people that studied your program, and see what they're doing. Reach out to them and say, hey, I'm currently studying this. Would you mind having a quick chat? I want to just understand a bit more about the industry. This is where you're stepping out of the fairy tale waiting to let me go and find the information that I need. And also, the process is something you have to just kind of trust every day. Because you'll only know in hindsight at 36, 46, oh, okay, this is what this was for. Okay, but you can't wait until you get there. You have to first figure out, what are my interests? What do I want to do? So having that end in mind, what do I want to, the impact I want to make in the world? That purpose statement of mine took me many years to refine. Okay, now I have it, but that was like in my 40s, right? So you still have a way to go for that. But in terms of embracing that process is to say, I'm trusting the process and I'm moving along in my journey. So reaching out, finding out information, asking people. I hope that's helped you. Yes. And later on, you'll see how it all kind of fits together. Next question?
Yeah,
Hi.
yeah, thank you very much. My name is Tony. My question is, which financial literacy book would you recommend?
My
You know,
one.
Okay,
Here you go, Tony. You can have this one.
okay, thank you. That was fundraising, by the way.
Oh, clever Tony. Let's pass it back to Tony. So fundraising, financial literacy books, actually, in terms of how to fundraise for your specific social enterprise, I would say there's many things that you could learn about, but essentially it would be knowing your why, knowing the cause, and then figuring out how to build a business model around this. Because what donors want to know is, how are you funding it? They don't want to be the ones that take all the risk. So you have to show, what risk am I able to build in, and this is how we're going to be generating income. So it has to be a blended model, actually, around that process. Tony got what he wanted. He's smiling. Next question.
Am I loud enough?
Yeah,
Okay.
go for it.
So I saw in one of your homeworks regarding the Pepper's blueprint, one of the aspects is identifying your abilities that people can pay for.
Yes.
And I feel like I personally struggle with knowing exactly what I'm good at and how to monetize my abilities. So my question is, how can we work around identifying what we're good at? Because I feel like it's a big struggle for most of us.
Okay. Have you done any VAC work or kind of
Yes,
tutoring?
I've been in corporate before,
Okay, so what kind of work were you doing in corporate there?
banking.
Banking? Did you like it?
Not really.
It's okay, to be honest. That's how you learn about what you're good at and what you're not good at. So I learned in my early career that I don't like working with data and numbers. I'm much better working with words, right? So I had to understand that about myself. And it's, again, the more you put your hands to things, the more you realize what you are good at. So do you maybe have some ideas of your kind of dream companies to work for?
Mostly investment banks. But yeah, I think in terms of the abilities, because I feel like I've been in corporate and I don't really enjoy it. And sometimes I think about venturing into business. But they always say if you want to start something, you need to start something you're good at. And I struggle with that. So yeah.
I'm going to say start something. That's how you learn. Start with something small. So if you have a business idea, right, think about how you can do a very kind of small version of that now, because that's how you learn. You know, for me to get to the kind of content I'm doing now, I started somewhere. I started with the money aspect, and it kind of builds, and I'm always refining it. So this is the key here, is continuous refinement, continuous iteration. So you design, you test, you iterate, repeat over and over again. And I would also maybe think about if I want to get into banking, and what didn't I like about the banking space, right? And then to also spend more time working with people who are in that space so you can actually start to see what it's really like. Because maybe again it's the proximity thing of I want to work here, but I actually want to do this kind of work. And maybe that kind of work can cross-correlate to other industries. What are you studying at the moment?
Financial management.
Financial management. So that could be something that you help small businesses with. Maybe you could even go to small, because I'm telling you they need the help, because they don't have a lot of many big teams. You could even look at small businesses groups in Pretoria and say, hey, I'm a student here, I'm doing this work, can I come and help in your business? And just start, test. It does mean you must step out of the comfort zone, though. Is it helpful?
Thank you.
Okay. Last question?
And we can just switch mics. Do you mind just passing that mic back to her?
Oh, no.
Did you also want to ask a question as well? Okay.
I think it's
Okay,
on.
you can ask and then.
Hi, Miss Cheryl. My name is Preeti. So, my question is: you kept referring to wholeness and knowing your real you, like realness. How does one, in which age, or does one get to know that, okay, I've actually arrived at that point where I'm like, okay, fine, I have reached the stage where this is my real self, and you show. Does it ever get to that point, or you just keep going?
Such a good question. I love that question because the answer is no, you never arrive. That's why it's difficult, because when we look at the fairy tale, we want perfection. We want the close-ended thing. Like this is, if I do this, then these things happen, right? But the journey, the adventure is a journey. You'll never know. And also, if you're doing the work that you love, your work and your legacy will probably outlive you, which is kind of what you want. You might never know the full impact of what you've done, which is why for me, allowing myself to write those books, I know that I've done the work of writing the book. Where it goes to, who it impacts, I might never know the full scope, but that's okay. And the joy of the adventure is that you discover cool stuff that you would never have known in the fairy tale. So the more of the real you that you discover and you step into that and you own, sometimes you have to fight for that ground to actually own your story. And I think women specifically have to do a lot more work and fighting for their voices. But once you do that and you stand in the strength of that, it kind of builds your confidence. So no, you never arrive. But the journey is fun. Last question. Hi.
And I'm a bit shy, so yeah. So in one
Well
of
done
your
for being brave and asking the question. Let's give her a round of applause, everybody. Well done.
in one of your slides, you mentioned about finance and how it links to career and relationship, and you also touched on the amount you owed and how when you go into a relationship you had to like settle that. So to what extent does it like affect, first of all, your relationship and also your career? And if you didn't take care of it, like to what extent would it be detrimental to your relationship and career?
So this is how I kind of explain it. My time is up. Can I have 2 more minutes to answer the question? Okay. This is how I kind of see how money is, right? Money is actually a reflector of your relationship with yourself. Money doesn't have values. You have values. Money doesn't have personality. You have a personality or character, belief system. You have all of that. So often what happens is we expect money to give us identity and purpose and value. So then it's too much in our heart. So the work around wholeness is, what am I believing about money? Because I do a whole course around this. Maybe ask Tony to share the book with you, right? You can also get it on Amazon, by the way. Just download it on Amazon. It's not too expensive. So I talk about just your identity has to be not in money, because otherwise you can't have money in your hand to do what you wanted to do. That's why if you know your purpose and you know what money is for, it's easier to use the money for what it's for. So for now, like I want to use money to buy freedom for my time. I want to be able to spend 3 months of the year just writing. I have a whole list of like children's books I want to write because my daughter's 3.5 and she's giving me lots of content. So the whole Zoe Zigaboo series, you know, it's inside. I want to bring that out. So that's why I talk about changing the script around money, because we've been told we have to work hard for money, but no one tells us how to make money work hard for us. You know, and also in our environments where we've come from, what we believe about wealth or wealthy people or who has the wealth, it's them, not us, that has to change. Because if we don't see ourselves as wealthy people, we'll never allow ourselves to make the money we need to do the change we want to do in the world. I could have 2 hours, but I can't go 2 hours with this. Thank you so much, everyone. It was really awesome. I really appreciated it.